Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, failing stars. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the Hubbard trial. And some good advice for Robert Bentley.
Problem of
perception.
That's right.
Reason why he's pulling our pants down.
Gonna paddle a little behind.
Ain't gonna paddle it. Gonna kick it real hard.
No, I believe he's gonna paddle it.
I don't believe that's a proper description.
Well, that's how I'd characterize it.
I believe it's more of a kicking situation.
Spank that bottom. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics, with your host, Bill Brett. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
Claire, your daughter, Hannah, had a great honor this week. I saw the photos. Y'all look beautiful. She's so smart, and we're very proud of her.
And it was a very high honor, I understand.
It was, and I'm very proud of her as well. Thank you very much.
Someone who didn't succeed and someone who has shame on their hands is this failed STARS software accounting program. We were able to get a copy of the letter sent to the governor and acting finance director Bill Newton saying that the program has so failed that the state will not be able to file its federally mandated accounting report. Susan, give us a little heads up on that.
Once again, this program is supposed to save us all this money. Chief Examiner Ron Jones this past week notified Governor Bentley and Acting Finance Director Bill Newton that they're not going to be able to file, the state is not going to be able to file its comprehensive annual financial report. Now, that sounds like, just a technical term, but it's very important. This is not like your income taxes that you can just file an extension to get a go-ahead to go in August. This has a hard, fast deadline. It has to be met. And on top of that, there are other reports that are very important to the state that depend on this one being filed first. So this one program, this savings, this $47 million program is going to cost us more now in penalties and sanctions because we can't do our reporting on time.
Claire, we were promised that this would add efficiency to government.
Well, okay, first of all, it's totally egregious, but then, as you mentioned, it has tripled down. It impacts and effects on all these other reports as well as state agencies.
It does. Well, see, you have to do the agencies have to do their single audit reports. Any agency that has federal assistance dollars that's involved in it has to do an annual report.
Right.
It too has a hard and fast deadline. If they can't make their deadline, they can't justify to the federal government why we're getting assistance to be able to aid, like Children's First or some of these other agencies.
Exactly. Most Alabama programs get some federal
This is a big
and federal money
deal.
is very important to Alabama.
And plus, we're talking about sanctions and late fees and on each agency in addition.
Are we going to use STARS to pay the sanctions?
Yeah.
That's a good idea. We could invoice them, but then it wouldn't be able to get through the system in time.
Somebody's heads ought to roll over something like this, because it'll be interesting to see at the end of the day how much money, penalties, and everything cost the state.
Oh, don't think we won't be looking.
Beth, the Republicans promised us transparency and efficiency. This was a no-bid contract for $47 million, and it's about as transparent as the bottom of, the Black Lagoon.
This is ridiculous. I'm sorry, $47 million for a program that doesn't work. I mean, back before Christmas, we had state employees that hadn't gotten paid. We had people that hadn't gotten their reimbursements. I mean, this affects everyday Alabamians. This affects the vendors that work for the state who, build our roads and bridges and have families to feed and supplies they have to buy. A lot of times they'll buy, what I think people don't understand is if you're doing a construction project for the state, you're going to buy the materials to do that project on your own credit with the faith that the state's going to give you the money back for it. So now you've got small business owners putting their houses on the line to do state projects, and this is ridiculous. This is not how government should work at all.
I mean, Claire, we've had an acting finance director for how many years now? We can't find a real one?
Well, for several years, but keep in mind, he's been an acting finance director, over the last 21 years since he's been in the finance department. He's been the head of that agency. So he knows where all the nooks and crannies are, but unfortunately, I think this has been a mistake because once again, all these agencies to get cleared, they had to go to the legal board of adjustments and cost time and legal fees and everything else to get their repayment out.
But
Well,
they're
I mean-
not getting repaid. Go ahead.
Well, you bring up a good point. Jim Ziegler, who's on the legal board of adjustment, this week said that they had to bring some 144 payments before that board to act as like a small claims court so that the agencies could get paid. I mean, Beth, it took them 13 months. They couldn't pay each other because the software program failed.
Right, and the whole point of the software was to be able to pay people. You know, right, and it was maybe a year ago in Jefferson County, we fired the person who hand wrote all of the checks for the county. And I was thinking, how ridiculous to have somebody handwriting our checks. This is 2015 at the time. Why would we not have a computer do this? This is why we don't have a computer do this.
And even though the Board of Adjustments agrees with every interagency bill that has been filed, they've agreed with the amounts, they've agreed with everything. We're still talking bills that were due 13 months ago that now you're still looking at another 6 to 10 months before they can actually get
cycles
paid.
have rolled over.
Yeah.
Payable is on to
And
another.
the problem is whatever the system
receivables.
we had before was working. This one is not.
Well,
Exactly.
that's what Jim Ziegler, the state auditor, said.
he
He said,
did.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right, I
And
don't
it
think-
wasn't broke, and they broke it with stars, is what he said.
But the problem is nobody can make any money off the system that's already in place. You got to find a way to pad your friend's pocket, so you got to find a
You
way
mean
to
like
bring the
revitalizing
system
a
in.
30-year-old contract that
Yeah, like
expired?
that,
Yeah,
exactly
okay, I
like
get
that.
it.
You know.
Okay, and really, and for the record, that is not Republicans that are doing that. Those are people that are enthralled in bureaucrats and state government.
That's true.
Corruption's corruption, regardless of the
Right.
party,
Yeah.
Claire. I wasn't putting a label on it. I was just saying these are people who are trying
No,
to pad their friends'
Republicans have got
pockets.
plenty. We got plenty of those.
Well, we got about 2 minutes. And
I was just trying not to blame the governor.
No, we want to get to something
I
else.
didn't blame the governor.
Everybody else says you might as well. I mean, he's become the whipping boy nationwide, but we'll get to that later. The Medical Association is calling for the governor to call a special session because there's no money for Medicaid. The hospitals have invested millions of dollars in these RCOs, and now they're having to push them off. I mean, Beth, we probably need a special session, but how are we going to fix it?
You know, there's so many options on the table. I know that the tobacco tax is not popular among a small group of people, but it seems like a reasonable option. We've got to find a way to get a lottery, some sort of gambling in here to make this work. I mean, every option's got drawbacks. There's no perfect solution. There's no silver bullet, but we're going to have people from both sides of the aisle, people from the private and public sectors come to the table and find something
Well,
here.
you know, I disagree with you on some of those options. I mean, the cigarette tax, a lot of these taxes are not going to pass. But I do think what Representative Jim Patterson from Madison County had to say, you know, in addition, if you want to fund Medicaid, let's take the BP money, because the fact that they didn't pass that bill, that money would roll into the general fund if they don't do something by October. Let's first pay back the trust fund, you know, for the rainy day fund that they borrowed money years ago.
$437 million.
Yeah, $550 million. Let's pay that back first. Then let's put hopefully enough into $85 million in for the Medicaid agency, and then let's fix roads and bridges with the rest of the BP money, but make sure they take care of Baldwin and Mobile counties.
Well,
Yes,
I agree
I
with you on
agree
that.
with
But what I think Beth hit the nail on the head, and I'm not a gambler, but I think if you bring a lottery in and put some of that money towards Medicaid and some of that money towards education, look, people are buying lottery tickets. They're playing slot machines or whatever you call them, bingo machines.
all over.
I mean, just let it go. I mean, it's here. We might as well make some money off of it.
I'll be clear. I was in Tennessee this weekend. I spent $20 on lottery tickets.
There you go.
$20 we could have put in Alabama's
$20
coffers.
that could have gone to Alabama.
But let me tell you something I saw just past week. They've got these mobile gambling machines riding around up in Madison County, and they got busted and confiscated.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
Baby did a bad, bad thing. Baby did a bad, bad thing. Baby did a bad, bad thing. Baby did a bad, bad thing.
In 1977, an 8-year-old boy picked up the game of golf from his father. The odds of that same boy then making it to the US and European pro golf tours, 1 in 7 million. The odds of the Big Easy winning the US Open twice, 1 in 1.2 billion. The odds of him having a child diagnosed with autism, 1 in 88. Ernie Els encourages you to learn the signs of autism.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. This past Monday, former First Lady Diane Bentley spoke at an event promoting foster care. You know, we've heard a lot about the Governor Bentley. We have not heard much about Ms. Bentley, former Ms. Bentley. She looked great at that event, and her speech was compelling. Beth, we had a great First Lady.
She was wonderful. You know, there was a joke that went around on Facebook by Ford, Alabama. It was a little kid praying at bed, and it said, "And God, can Miss Bentley please get custody of the state of Alabama?" And I'm gonna echo that again. Can we please bring this up and give Miss Bentley custody?
And even though she is no longer living in the governor's mansion, she is no less dedicated to the causes that she started or dedicated herself to when she first became First Lady. She's still out there for domestic violence. She's out there for foster children. Understand, Mr. and Miss Bentley have 2 adopted children. So the foster care and these sorts of issues are very, very close to her heart.
I mean, she's passionate about it.
She is passionate, and it's not made up. And she's still out there fighting for the family, even though, you know, hers has been taken apart.
Claire, she is an example of a real steel magnolia, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. And, you know, her name is Miss Bentley, and it will always be Miss Bentley. And she'll always be a former First Lady of the state of Alabama. And I'm glad to see her getting out and speaking and advocating on things that are important to her, and that Gateway organization, which is, I think, the oldest nonprofit in Birmingham, and the fact that they had like over 106 families that had foster children, and they did recruitment from this. So she was a great mentor, you know, for all the people
And Claire,
out there.
don't you think people want to hear more from Mrs. Bentley, that this is something that Alabamans want to make sure she's...
I don't know about that, but I'm glad she's out, and I'm glad in the issues that she is advocating, she's done great at.
Yes.
I want to talk about something that we have been told happened in the governor's office or with Aaliyah or some law enforcement. It is believed that someone within the governor's circle, or perhaps the governor, has accessed Spencer Collier's medical records and looking specifically at prescription drugs that he might be taking. Claire, this is a Class C felony if it's happened.
Well, first of all, that is egregious and that is inappropriate. But, you know, keep in mind, he may have been taking prescription drugs because he just had back surgery, you know, 3 or 4 months ago prior to this.
Keyword there is prescription. That means they were prescribed to him by a medical professional, and it's nobody's business what happens between him and his doctor.
And I think this is just spying, and this is, you know, conspiracy with guilty people who are trying to come after somebody else.
Well, we know that the governor ordered Spencer Collier and other law enforcement to use the federal criminal database and the state database to investigate, you know, Donald Watkins and Roger Schuler.
And his own children.
And his own children. But now I don't know if you guys remember, but I know I just confirmed with someone else that remembers the day of Spencer Collier's press conference. There was a little line in one of the news articles, Birmingham news articles, that said that at least today Spencer Collier didn't have as much erratic behavior as he had been. Now that to me screamed that somebody was accusing him of mishandling prescription drugs.
Well, we cannot get the medical examiners or the health department to come forward with any real answers. I mean, it's going to take an investigation by law enforcement to find out if this has happened. The good thing is, that paper trail never goes away. If you log in and you check someone's file, it's there permanently.
Now remember,
investigations are very rampant around Montgomery, Alabama, and across the state. They're extremely busy.
Also remember that under that same law, that physician has the right to give his information, his unique ID, to 2 members of his staff in order for them to be able to use a database.
Well,
so either the governor uses it,
in there is medical staff, not gubernatorial staff.
I agree with you completely. I agree with you completely.
you know, the governor's office sent us a carefully parsed email saying that they denied this. One of the interesting parts they said was that if someone had accessed the NIC or LETS database, the criminal database, it would be on the officer, not who ordered him to do it.
Yeah, and the whole thing, this violates the whole HIPAA law for Spencer Collier.
Yeah.
And his medical records and whatever he may
And that is a federal law,
Sure
not a
is.
state of Alabama
And I just
law.
can't help but think, you know, taking this, and as somebody in the public that's listening and hears this, how could you possibly believe that your First Amendment rights to free speech are protected when you think that it's a possibility that someone who disagrees with what you think can go into your private records, your private background, and use that to expose you and take you down? This is a huge constitutional issue.
Well, there are ex-staffers that are terrified. When they see a trooper pull up behind them, they go into a panic because they don't know that they won't be something used against them. I want to move on to another story. Governor Bentley had an op-ed in AL.com this week in which he said that he basically hinted that he wants a special session so he can pass his prison bill. He also reminded the people of Alabama that God had placed him in the governor's office. Last time I checked, God did not vote in Alabama. I didn't find a registration, and neither was Obama on the ballot. I mean, two falsehoods, but I mean, this is a circus, isn't it, Claire?
I mean, you know, there's always that hypocrisy about, you know, getting defeated by being attached to Obama, and then somebody tries to out-Christian the other one a little bit more. But
I don't know
put
if God
that
placed
aside.
him behind Rebecca Mason.
Yeah, but put that all aside. I mean, you know, the governor was vehemently active trying to get this prison reform bill passed. They did pass it in the Senate, but he said, oh, if we'd had another hour, we probably could have passed this and done a lot of negotiation. Well, the bottom line is they didn't have cloture votes in the House that night. And, you know, I think that for those that worked against it, they probably saved a lot of people going from jail to jail 5 years down the road.
Absolutely.
Plus, even if they hurt your philosophy of being a criminal lawyer. But if they pass it again, you'll still have plenty
Hey, with
more
the
work.
prisons way they are, civil work's pretty common because there are constitutional violations all over Tutwiler. So one way or another,
had they
lawyers
had
will be
another
employed.
hour in the House, it takes an hour to get cloture. So anytime, by the time they went 10 minutes after 11,
they just didn't have it.
Craig Ford got up and said, isn't it true that it takes an hour to get cloture? And which was a signal that we're going to filibuster because you guys.
I mean,
don't
let's
have the
remember
vote.
this is an $800 million
No bid contract.
No bid contract
No
to somebody.
performance, no plan.
Well, wait a minute. You know, I happened to attend the conference committee in the Senate. Well, so as a little compromise to pass it in the Senate to get it down to the House, they said, oh, well, wait a minute. We're going to bid out the Tutwiler prison, but the two men's prisons, they're not going to be bid out.
See,
Now, that's just egregious within itself.
I'm sorry.
Again, they're
The
putting
standard's a standard.
Tutwiler on the back burner again.
Yet they didn't hesitate to call the female legislators in and say Tutwiler is on your shoulders when these women get raped. This is ridiculous.
And set this aside. Are prisons more important or funding Medicaid for the state of Alabama and the citizens and the children and women that need it?
Because
And the bottom
if we
line
could
is,
fund Medicaid,
is.
if we could fund Medicaid, we could keep a lot of people out of prison because mental health services would be available. That's what happens when people go to prison.
Listen, 5 months ago, no one was talking about building prisons.
No.
And then all of a sudden, 5 months later, we just got to have them and we got to have them now.
And it costs $1.5 billion conservatively.
Right. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis. Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Beth, we have hit the trifecta on embarrassment. Mike Hubbard is going to trial. Robert Bentley is, I don't know, out of his mind.
Where he is.
And Judge Roy Moore has been indicted by JIC. I mean, this is crazy. We're laughingstock, aren't we?
We really are, and I never thought I'd see the day when Kay Ivey's the voice of reason for the state of Alabama, but yet here we are. And again, I never thought that I'd be saying Roy Moore's the least crazy of all of them. I never thought that any of this would be happening. I don't know what to do. I mean, it's like the Twilight Zone.
I mean, it really is an embarrassment for our state.
I mean,
but I'm a little concerned of the underlying reasons and and all the things why they're coming after Judge Roy.
You can draw it all back to one person, Claire. Who's that person?
That's true.
The kingpin on the 5th floor.
Yeah, that's true.
In that corner office.
Well, I just think, Susan, I mean, it's been in European news, it's on the New York Times, it's on NBC, ABC. Nationally, we are just this is like hillbilly Watergate.
The most embarrassing part of all of this is it doesn't surprise anybody nationally. No. It doesn't surprise anybody internationally.
It doesn't surprise
this is
anybody
going
here.
on. I know, and that's more embarrassing than anything.
But the underlying thing again is, it doesn't. But those of us who live here, we know how calculating, manipulative, vindictive, and good at what he does.
Oh, we do.
Mike Hubbard and his cronies digging up stuff, pushing it out, trying to get this in the media to take the pressure off of him.
Well,
exactly. It just goes to show it all comes back to elections have consequences. And when people don't vote or they don't pay attention to who they're voting for, and this goes for both sides of the aisle because there's good and bad people on both sides, then you get people in office like Mike Hubbard and Governor Bentley. Governor Bentley's the accidental governor. He always has been and always will be. I mean, that's just the way it is.
To add to that, Beth, you did have 104, because Alvin Holmes voted against. You had 104 people who knew what they were doing, who voted for him after he was indicted to continue to be the Speaker of the House.
They're scared.
That's right. They're threatening. They're scared of him.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, this thing with Justice Roy Moore has me scared because, a lot of those people on JIC, the Judicial Inquiry Committee.
It's too political.
They're appointed. They're appointed. The court that's going to try him is appointed. And I mean, for goodness sake, they're going to hire their own private investigator. I mean, the books are cooked against Roy Moore.
And I'll just throw this back. When I worked in the Attorney General's office under Pryor, the Attorney General's office and Sessions, they did the prosecution investigation. And to give JIC this authority, and all the political people that sit on that?
Also, it gave them the authority to suspend Roy Moore until his trial. Now, this goes against our national code of innocent until proven guilty. As it stands right now, Roy Moore is guilty until proven innocent.
And that's wrong. And I think, isn't it correct? We're the only state in the nation that does this?
That's my understanding. We're Beth. We're the only people who do that.
And I don't have a problem with him being suspended from the bench until this is sorted out. And I think that more states should have that policy, and this is why. Because while Mike Hubbard can sit in the Speaker's chair under indictment, legislation can be passed one day and overturned the next day, whereas Supreme Court decisions, they are binding, and they are binding in more ways than just for that court. I mean, it's stare decisis, so it's a little bit different in the way that the branches of government work. And look, the thing is, Roy Moore, I think, is wrong. He is patently wrong on this issue about gay marriage and this whole issue that we're dealing with. But we can't get down to that issue because you have Mike Hubbard's former defense attorney who is going to be deciding whether or not he did this wrong.
I have to take Roy Moore's side on this to some degree. I think he is arguing Alabama constitutional law against federal constitutional law. This has been going on since 1776.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. We can't deal with that issue because we're too busy trying to deal with the fact that Mike Hubbard's got his own cronies in JIC. That are, you know what I'm saying? We can't get through the political stuff to get through the legal stuff.
It's too political, Claire, and it's so political. I mean, a lot of this stuff started under Mark White.
Oh, yes, it did.
Back when right after Bill Pryor, when Troy King came in, Mark White was there, and now they hire their own private people.
And isn't Augusta Dow also on JIC?
Oh, yeah. Augusta Dow's on JIC.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a lot of conflicts of interest, and then there's the Scott gentleman from Auburn, Alabama, from Lee County, big supporter.
Mike Hubbard, a bunch of stuff at his business,
his
didn't he?
dad did, yeah.
And then let's reflect back, because I kind of a little bit disagree with Beth on this. You're right. There's legal binding documents, but the United States Supreme Court can overturn cases. But, okay, let's go back again, just for the viewers and people all over this country. South Carolina, North Carolina, Indiana, and New York, when their speakers were indicted on something, every one of them stepped down.
Oh, don't take this as me saying
that has not stepped down.
Do not take this
as
me saying that Mike Hubbard is okay to stay in the Speaker's chair. I am one of the two party or elected Democrats who have said Mike Hubbard needs to resign, and I stand by that. I'm just trying to articulate the difference as to why the judicial branch
Because
and the
a lot of
legislative
people,
branch
I
have
think,
to
would be-
function a
at
little
least I
differently.
was kind of questioning that until you actually cleared it up for me.
I will say we.
Mark Fuller the same. They eventually let him.
It is a shame that this man has been allowed to remain Speaker, because we wouldn't have 10% of these problems if he had been forced from office, or at least forced from the speakership.
Let me go back to one very important issue on that, and I'm going to keep pounding this until it sticks. Because if you're talking about a Medicaid issue, the Attorney General's office came up with an idea that has worked before to use the fraud investigation unit to go after Medicaid fraud. In the meantime, because this man sits in power and he hates the Attorney General's office, he assigns that to Veterans Affairs Committee chaired by Barry Moore and kills it. He kills an idea to help Medicaid.
Yeah, I mean,
this underlines why he should not be there.
It's affecting every Alabamian at this point. It is affecting every Alabamian.
That's called being vindictive.
Thank you.
Because we started that Medicaid fraud unit when I was there in the Attorney General's office, and it has worked very well and worked with the agencies and recouped a lot of money.
That breaks it down very simply as to how effective he can be as a vindictive sitting speaker.
Well, jury selection starts tomorrow, Monday.
Yep.
Jury selection starts with the trial to follow on the 24th, opening statements on the 24th, 25th. Christmas is coming early.
Christmas is coming, and I did not get my summons. I'm not called to be on the Mike Hubbard jury, unfortunately. I've moved my voter registration and everything. It's all back in Jefferson County now, but man, I was hoping I'd get it confused. I get that call to be on the jury.
I think they'd strike you pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have got through the front door.
No, Mark Whiteville, you turn around.
I mean, the process is going to be very interesting because, Mike Hubbard has just owned the media down there, and they've printed whatever he wanted
literally
to.
owned the
Yeah,
media.
Yes, so the picking of the jury is going to be very critical in this case.
It is.
And it will be a big factor.
It will, and it will take a long time.
Well, we've got about less than 20 seconds. We understand that they had a mock trial some months ago, and that the trial was held in Lee County, and they came back with a guilty verdict on all 23 counts within 2 hours. That's pretty strong.
Can't wait. I think the late Redding Pitt was the prosecutor in that,
Yeah,
if I heard
I've
right.
heard that. I don't know if that's a fact, but I'm telling you, they had a great defense, and they still lost. We're going to have to leave
Let's
it right
hope for
there.
good justice.
Yeah. We're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them. Thank you.